Welcome to another presentation of the Sound and Emotions Conference. Today we have Suzanne Sterling. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. What have you been up to lately?
Woo! So many good things. One thing I can say is that I'm about to launch a new course, new Voice of Change course, and I co-founded a spiritual musicians collective called the Oracle Collective. We are just about to launch a grand experiment to support all spiritual musicians everywhere.
Tell me more about that. How's that work?
Well, we're bringing together chant artists and musical artists in the spiritual category, even though there's not a spiritual category of the Grammys. We're actually trying to advocate for more categories in the Grammys for spiritual artists and a way for us to work together to uplift the community, to bring more visibility to the community and the music itself and the healing benefits of the music itself, and to support all the musicians because in COVID, there have been a lot less ways for musicians to make money, support those musicians and being together as a collective, learning together, sharing resources, and really just not only supporting each other, but supporting our fans in finding new artists and supporting the world at large to understand the power and the majesty of spiritual music. So
Excellent,
we have a
excellent.
hundred we have 100 global artists already in the collective, and we're
Oh,
expanding.
oh, oh, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Let me read your bio. Okay.
Sure.
So, Suzanne Sterling is an inspirational musician who has dedicated her life to exploring the power and potential of the human voice. She has poured her voice into making beautiful, transformative music, as well as generously guiding others to help find their voice, courage, and creative freedom through her Voice of Change trainings. As both an artist and teacher, she's devoted to serving the power of collective song and co-creating a world where we remember that singing is our birthright. Suzanne is also a respected social activist and the co-founder of Off the Mat Into the World, a nonprofit organization renowned in the global yoga community that is focused on bridging the tools of yoga with sustainable conscious activism and effective community action. Often referred to as a musical priestess, Suzanne's transcendent music merges elements of electronic dance music, sacred chant, global grooves, and ritual to transport the consciousness of listeners. She's headlined in many festivals and has recorded over 30 years, 5 solo albums, and worked with a lot of other artists. She's also been in many, done music for many films and theaters and DVDs and gifting at Burning Man Festival and the award-winning Vinyasa Flow Yoga 1 and 2 with Sean Korn, produced by Gaiam Inc. And as she just mentioned, she founded the Oracle Collective as well. Cool, cool. Tell me more. I've never really heard what Off the Mat does. Tell me
Off,
more about it.
yeah, off the mat. We began by wanting to aggregate and support yoga practitioners into stepping into their purpose. And a lot of times, what happens when people start doing yoga is they start wanting to serve, be of service in the world, but just not knowing how necessarily. So we started doing some trainings around social justice and deep self-inquiry about how to serve and giving people practical tools about how to serve, finding the voice being one of them, and over and visioning projects that might better the world. And so over the last 16 years, we have helped people create their own projects, service projects, and I ran our global fundraising program where we raised $3.5 million over
Wow.
8 years and took people all over the world to do service humanitarian trips. And so basically, Off the Mat's a training organization supporting bringing spiritual ideas and even spiritual embodiment out into action in the world. How do we serve the world? If we've done all this work inside, then how do we actually live into those principles and begin to change the systems or structures that created the suffering in the first place?
Excellent, excellent. So your presentation is on trauma. I think if you just live on this planet, you're already traumatized.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially right now. But yeah, it's true. Living includes trauma. But the interesting thing is not all. I think all trauma is bad because trauma is actually a stressor that is beyond our capacity to cope. Right? There's a difference between stress and trauma. But there's a bell curve. We need some stress in order to build resilience and build strength. So there's this way in which if we don't have enough stress, we don't actually build self-initiative, we don't build the courage and strength and resilience that we need to be in this world, which is very challenging at times. And then there's this perfect amount that allows us to be functioning adults. And then there's the too much, right? And if we go into the too much end of the spectrum, then it becomes trauma. It overwhelms our capacity. And there's a lot of talk about trauma in the world right now, but I think it's really intriguing that we are starting to learn that we can actually stop the cycles of violence or the cycles of trauma that we inherited from our ancestors and that come to us from just living in the dysfunctions of the world today. We have a lot of tools about how to heal those, and hallelujah, we get to do this work of healing, right? It's a privilege.
I saw a study where they actually showed scientifically that the trauma from past generations actually definitely gets carried through to our DNA.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just let you blast off. So I'm really excited. It's so important. It's so important because so many people are just living in this trauma state, right? And it's just stopping people from shining.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I want to just dive off from that, David, and say that one of the things that I always say that I think is really important is that human beings are hardwired for self-expression. It's who we are at the basis, at the core. But we're not just hardwired for self-expression in isolation. We're actually hardwired for self-expression together. That also is who we are. And our nervous systems deeply respond in a healing way to being able to be in that state of aliveness, we could say, or that state of expression in community with others. And it helps us to not only self-regulate, which is to come to a state of deeper state of health, a deeper state of balance within ourselves, but also to co-regulate, to understand that we are in a world in which we are interdependent, and our actions matter. So I often look at the world today, especially now as we've gone through about 2.5 years of the isolation of COVID, the not gathering in groups, which is actually so really important for our nervous systems for that co-regulation factor. We've had these 2.5 years, but even before that, I think that many people are walking around in a state, in a like a mild or an even extreme state of what's called the freeze response, which is this, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, right? When actually we're actually not okay. And part of what's making it not okay is that we have lost, or we have civilized ourselves away from the very expression that we need, right? We've lost rituals. We've lost ways for human beings to come together and be in our bodies and express the intensity of being human. And that intensity is not always bad. It's sometimes good, right? How many places do you have in your life where you can go into states of like pure joy and woo ecstasy and be comfortable with that and not feel like you're weird or crazy, right? It's very difficult for us to find those places where we can really be in true ecstasy and joy together, where we can also really be in true grief and sorrow and maybe even true rage together. And that is the human experience. So human beings are like walking antennas. We are extremely sensitive, way more sensitive than we think. We're picking up information all the time through our eyes, through our ears, through our whole vibrational being. We respond, right? And in fact, we're made to respond. We're made to respond to everything that impacts us. We're made to respond to everything that impacts us. That is to say, when something horrible happens, we have a response, whether we admit it or not. Something horrible happens, like maybe someone has a car accident. Oftentimes when people have a car accident, they begin to the shaking motion, and the appropriate response is to let the body feel the terror of that life or death situation that just happened. Whereas many people, we've been conditioned to just say, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And we kind of contract in. But then maybe later there's a post-accident kind of, result, right? A medical result or a physical result. And that may come from that contraction, that not admitting the terror of the moment. Ultimately, when something wonderful happens to us, we're also made to respond to that and to have an expression, have an emotion. But for some reason, today, many of us are conditioned and taught to be small, to be quiet, to not make noise, to not make waves, to not have that original human experience. It's only, it's only the professionals that get to express themselves. And again, especially in COVID, we don't even have places where we can necessarily go and dance anymore. Never mind use our voices. That's something that we've been conditioned to deeply fear, especially collective voices, right? Even though that is what humans have been doing from the beginning of time. From the beginning of time, humans have gathered to move emotion and intensity through our bodies. We've gathered to lift our voices together. We know the power of the collective voice, but we've somehow said that's bad, wrong, wild, too primal, out of control, chaotic, whatever it is. We say no to it. And I know from trying to bring it back in and normalize it in our culture that it still scares us. It still scares us. And I think I know why. And it's because of this wonderful thing called resonance. Resonance is, one of the things that we study at the Sound Healing Institute very intensively, which is this idea that if two or more vibrational patterns match up, there's an amplification of the field, right? So it's like when an opera singer sings the note that matches the wine glass and it shatters. This is what happens in our bodies with sound. If we actually find the empty places in our body where sound resonates or gains that power without any force, we begin to have a very different experience of the medicine of our own voices. So we are resonating chambers, human beings. But also when human beings come together in collectives and we move together, breathe together, sing together, not only do our heart rates begin to match up, our respiration begins to match up, our brain waves begin to entrain, but there is an amplification of the field. There's a collective resonance that happens. And that is a powerful, powerful thing. It's something greater than the sum of its parts. And so I believe that this is why we have been taught to fear our individual voices and our collective voices, because there's power there. There is great power there. So back to trauma. Why do I say that I believe that many of us are walking around in this state of freeze? Well, some of the symptoms that I know that are endemic in culture today, some of the symptoms might be isolation, or some of the symptoms might be excessive amounts of addictive behavior. Some of the symptoms might be a sense of anxiety or panic attacks. Many of these coping mechanisms are symptoms of this too much energy in our system. We have too much running through us, whether it's emotion or stimulation or traumatic events that have happened to us that are still moving through us, that we haven't been able to process, that we haven't been able to rinse and release. And they're changing us. And part of what we're doing is trying to self-regulate. I have a friend who says we're always trying to feel better, whether we're, taking a yoga class or drinking alcohol. We're always trying to make ourselves feel better. That's what the nervous system wants to do. And if we give it some tools and resources to do that, to come to self-regulation, to release and rinse the trauma out of our bodies, out of our systems, then we have a better chance at living lives without some of these difficult conditions, right? And then even over time, as we are organizing and tensing around the things that are too much for us to deal with, that feel chaotic and out of control and painful, if we're tensing around them, we often even begin to organize around them, especially stuff that happened to us as children. Because as children, we are definitely powerless. We are definitely overwhelmed by traumatic events or chaotic events. We organize around those, and those organizational places, those places of contraction or tension, over time, have the potential to become dis-eased, right? And often what that looks like is it's a place where the life force is not able to flow. right? The life force, chi, prana, whatever you call it, wants to flow. So if we look at, the system of understanding feng shui, it's really natural systems, human systems, many systems exhibit healthy behavior when they're moving, right? So the energy must move is basically the principle here. Our energy must move. It must have freedom of movement. When we contract on a situation or a traumatic event, what happens is we stop the movement. And again, over time, that can become a calcified or a contracted place in us. Maybe it's heartbreak, right? The heart just clenches down on that heartbreak and goes, I'm not going to love again. I'm not going to expand again. I'm not going to love again. I'm going to protect myself. And that is a normal response. That protective response is a fabulous response, actually. But if we're holding on to it and it's no longer necessary for us to hold on to it, what can we do to find that sense of expansion, that sense of flow? Is we can begin to learn how to release those blocks. And the beautiful thing about it is that sound moves matter. Sound moves matter. Sound moves matter. So sound can support us in shaking up those calcified places, moving that energy out, bringing us to states of groundedness, connection, openness, and flow. So I'm just going to take a moment here and ask you to notice if you feel connected right now, if you can feel a sense of being held on the earth, the deep, slow vibrational pattern, the frequency of the earth matches the frequency of our brains when we're in deep meditative states. See if you can just breathe into that, right? Breathe into the sense that you are part of this interconnected, interdependent web of all beings breathing together. We're quite literally breathing with the trees right now. And notice if that has an impact on your nervous system. Maybe you breathe differently. Maybe you have slowed down a little bit. Maybe you feel a little more at ease or at peace. And just know that there are resources all around to support us in healing whatever trauma we're carrying or stressors we're carrying, stressors that are overwhelming to us. And it is quite a privilege to be able to do that. We have access to so many healing tools and modalities and philosophies, more than we ever have on the planet. So now is the time for those of us who have the capacity to do it, to heal, and not only heal our own patterns of trauma, but heal the patterns of trauma that we inherited, as David and I were talking about. The stories that couldn't be told by our ancestors, the ways in which our ancestors had to hide who they were, or had traumatic events that they could never talk about, that lives in our DNA. So it's a beautiful opportunity for us to use all the tools, but particularly today talking about the tool of sound and specifically our own voices, because they move us from the inside out, to release trauma so that we can come into a deeper state of flow, a deeper state of health and healing, a deeper state of presence and availability. So I'm just going to take a pause for a moment and feel what that feels like for you. And I want to talk a bit about how trauma lives in us. So as I said in the beginning of the call, the definition of trauma is anything that overwhelms our capacity to cope and leaves us feeling helpless, hopeless, or out of control. So you can imagine that as a child, if you experience, like I did, some kind of chaos or any kind of abuse, that there's trauma there, right? Our bodies remember everything that has happened to us. Our brains remember everything that has happened to us. It's all recorded. It's all there. It's a signature, right? Or as they say in trauma healing, our body keeps the score, right? So we're holding on to our experiences. And sometimes so I'm a child of abuse. If something happened today that reminded me of that, like a person came in that looked like the person who who was perpetrated something against me. If a person came in, I saw them, they looked like it, or I got in a conflicted situation that was similar to the one that I grew up in, I might get what's called triggered, right? I might have a full body experience of that original trauma. And I might go into a state, like I probably did in that original trauma, of either fight, which is I get aggressive, I protect myself that way, or I flee, or it's called fight flight. I run away, which is how I coped as a child with that. So I might fight, I might flight, or I might freeze, or sometimes called freeze collapse, right? Some people have experiences of trauma that are a combination, right? I might flight and freeze. But if we don't, and maybe that was an appropriate response, right? It certainly was for me. It saved my life at the time, but it also silenced me, right? It was a way in which my safety was dependent on me silencing my voice. Many people today, even as we're sitting here right now, it is actually dangerous for them to speak their truth. It is actually dangerous for them to live into the truth of who they are. I'm not talking about that because that's a real thing for many people. And I wouldn't just say, just find your voice, just free yourself from that, because it's actually an actual real danger. But what I do want to help us heal is the parts of us that are protecting ourselves when it's not necessary anymore, right? I'm no longer in danger. But there may be a part of me that if I have that reminder experience that triggers me, the conflict, for me it's conflict. If I have that experience, it might trigger that response in me. And I need to learn how to come back to self-regulation, to not stay in that state. And again, for many of us in COVID, we've kind of gotten into this state of sort of like a body-based fear and a body-based separation from others. And we're going to have to heal from that. We're going to have to remember the joy of being together. We're going to have to remember the joy of singing together and being in community together, and what happens to our physical bodies when that happens. So the other thing I want to talk about in terms of this is, well, I'll start with this. The fight, flight, or freeze response is a self-protective mechanism. It's a beautiful mechanism. And unfortunately, what happens is it becomes an imprint in our nervous system. It becomes an imprint in our brains. Why is this the case for humans and not for, let's just say, animals who have life or death experiences all the time? Why are they not walking around in states of anxiety and having addictive behaviors and aggressive behaviors and things like that? Well, there's this beautiful film that was filmed by a team that was working with Peter Levine, who invented or discovered this thing called sorry, I just had a mind blank. He somatic experiencing. He invented and discovered somatic experiencing, which is the idea that our bodies know how to heal. We speak with our bodies and our nervous systems, and they just automatically know how to heal. They know what to do because the story of the trauma is in our bodies, and the story of the healing can be in our bodies too. And what he discovered is he filmed a possum getting chased by a fox. And the possum is too small to run from the fox. It's too small to fight the fox. So what does it do? It lays down on its back and it plays dead. It plays possum. And the fox comes up and sniffs the possum and loses interest because it's not moving, and then walks away. So at that point, what the possum does is it doesn't just get up and say, I'm fine, and walk away. It actually begins to move its body. And what it's doing is it's releasing that experience. It's not holding on to that experience. It's actually releasing it, rinsing it and releasing the fear, the adrenaline, the cortisol, which is what happens to us when we have a trauma response. All that stuff gets activated in our bodies, right? The adrenaline starts to, make our digestive systems shut down. We get tunnel vision. All the energy, all those hormones get raced into the muscles of the body, so that we're ready to fight, so that we're ready to flee, and if we can't do either of those, then we freeze. But if we freeze, all that hormonal information is still running through the system. So when the danger leaves, we want to have this response, this moving, shaking, which is exactly what the possum does. And if you slow down the film, the possum actually is doing this action, which is running, right? So to the nervous system of the possum, it got away from the fox. It doesn't have to carry that experience with it. This is the natural animal response, right? So, maybe a natural response for us if we go through a traumatic or a dangerous experience or something that's shocking to us, maybe a natural response would be I've tried it after something intense or scary, and it actually does work. It brings the body back into a state of self-regulation. Now, sound can do that too. We want to actually not just do the movement, but we want to actually create sounds, and maybe even on a daily basis, that allow us to move the terror, move the rage, move the grief, move the sorrow, move the joy, move it through us. We are instruments of release, instruments of expression, right? So every day in my practice, I am moving energy. I am releasing what I don't want to carry or hold on to. And I do this as part of my daily practice because I feel life intensively. Maybe you do too. I definitely do. And so this has helped me be a happier human. And then imagine if we were actually able to create or remember how to create rituals where we give ourselves that option collectively to move through the intensity, move toward those states of joy and connectivity and co-regulation. It would be a very different world that we would be living in. But the other thing I want to say about all this is that they've also done studies around truth-telling. And truth-telling is a complicated issue right now because we're in an age of, I'll just say we're in an age of over information, onslaught of information that may or may not have any basis in fact, right? There's arguments about what's truth, what's not. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the truth of our authentic being under the conditioning of our culture. The truth of our authentic being under the conditioning of our culture, all the ways we've been taught to be, what is actually true for us, if we can get there through self-inquiry, through healing. That truth is deeply, deeply healing for us. Being able to live into it and speak it and express it is deeply healing for us. In other words, telling lies is bad for our health, and living into embodying and speaking our truth is good for our health. We're starting to actually be able to measure and understand that. Again, I want to go back to that concept of resonance, because truth is its own resonant field, right? When I live into and speak the truth of who I am, my words and actions match up. There is a strengthening of the whole system. Versus I'm saying one thing and doing another. There's a schism, there's a dissonance in the system, right? Perhaps you've noticed, you might see someone and it all looks good, but you have this feeling in your gut like that's just not matching up. Trust that. It may be true. And what we've learned now from studies about trauma is that if a child especially goes through a traumatic experience as a child, and it's not acknowledged, it's not talked about, it's denied, it's pretended that it doesn't exist, it's shoved under the rug, that actually is very much more traumatic to the system than if a child goes through a traumatic experience and it's actually acknowledged and discussed. So the lie, the denial and the lie and the secrets and the secrets and the lies basically are what damage our expression. They're damaging to our expression. They're damaging to our whole health system. This is why the work of sounding and singing and living into the truth of who we are and giving it expression is key to healing. It's like letting ourselves out of the protection that we had to create to save our lives. And it's really important that we do this not only for ourselves, but for those who couldn't do it, those who came before us who couldn't do it, and those who come after us who will also need to be able to understand and remember the human experience includes the innate creativity of our humanness. So I'm going to pause in that for a moment and just check the time. Okay, we're doing well. So our aliveness is a visceral thing. Our health system is a vibrational thing. It's when we come into this consonance with ourselves, when we are in alignment with the truth of who we are. And I'm going to ask you some questions about that later, but I want you to actually, with me for the next few moments, just feel a sense of the medicine of your own voice. Like you have full permission in the next few moments, hopefully in a place where you feel comfortable, to make sounds. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be, you don't even have to like it necessarily, but what we're asking for is for you to feel it, because sound, especially singing, is a physical thing. It's not located here in the throat, although the throat shapes all the sounds, but it's actually a full body experience. And when it's a full body experience, it has the capacity to heal us tremendously, heal our bones, heal our organs, heal our nervous system, heal the synapses in our brain. Like, it's amazing. And hopefully you're learning in this sound healing conference the many ways that we're using sound as medicine. We're starting to really deeply understand the power of sound, and also the power of sound as weaponry. And this is one of the things that why I feel so passionate about reclaiming our voices, reclaiming our truth, so that we can refute the ways in which sound is being used as a harmful thing and bring it back into the realm of healing and make it accessible and available to all beings. Everybody has a voice, except for people who maybe have some injury or some handicap in that way. But many people, unless there's a physical thing going on, many people who think they don't have a voice or can't sing actually just don't understand their instrument. This is our instrument. It's a full body experience. It includes the vocal cords, but it actually must engage the whole system. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just stand up if you can. I'll put my screen up a little bit. And I'm going to invite you to just shake your body a little bit. So you, especially if you've been sitting, shake your hips, shake your spine a little bit. Maybe roll through the spine or roll through the shoulders. Find some looseness, find some capacity for a little bit of movement of the energy of the body through the breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Maybe bring your weight side to side, bring your hips side to side. Move your arms a little bit. And then as you move your arms and your spine and your hips, start to make some faces. Like stick out your tongue. Release some tension in your jaw, your face. Not really showing any face. You don't have to show anything. Just letting go of what's called the muscles of social engagement. Okay, that's these muscles in the teeth, tongue, the jaw, the face. We're just letting it go. Make a little sound as you release. And I just want to say in this moment, if there was some point in your life that you were told that you could not or should not sing or find your voice or speak your truth, first of all, I'm very sorry. That certainly happens to many, many people. You're not alone. If you've been yearning for a sense of self-expression, a yearning for a sense of being impactful in the world, speaking a truth that you know needs to be spoken, you're not alone. This is a huge part of the work of these times, and now's the time to do it. So I want to give you some tips and tools. First, we're just going to breathe into the body, not just the lungs, but the body itself. So you're going to take a big breath into the intercostal muscles, which is these rib muscles here. Big breath, expand them in all directions, as big as you can. Hold that breath, and then as you exhale, bring the belly in toward the spine. Say, ah, ah. Just going to take a drink of water. Keep going with that. Ha. We're going to do two more of those. See if you can engage these core muscles, right? Keep the breath in the body, keep the sound in the body, and feel that sense of your body being vibrated with the sound. Big breath. And one more. Big breath into the ribs. Hold that, engage the core, open and relax the throat. So you're holding the sound in the body, getting that sense of resonance, right? So the whole body becomes an empty chamber for the sound. The sound finds that expansion or that resonance, and then it just stays in the body and it starts to massage your body from inside out, and then it begins to move out into the room. Okay, we're not sending the sound out, we're actually holding it in and letting it move us and move through us. One more of these. Big breath. And here's a tip. Here's how you know that you're doing it correctly, which is it doesn't sound like you're making the sound, or doesn't feel like you're making the sound. It feels like the sound is moving through you. It's singing you as opposed to the other way around. Okay. Now I want to show you something that I use all the time and I love. It has to do with our low notes, right? The low notes in our voice range resonate down here in the empty spaces of the chest and the lungs. And there's this ancient Taoist technique for anxiety, which I do. I use this actually all the time on airplanes and other places. You can either do it squatting down or you can do it standing. I'm going to show you squatting so you see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squat down, and you can do this holding onto a chair if you want to, if that helps you keep your balance. Or you can bring your knees down like this, one knee down. But you're going to have one hand on the earth and one hand on your chest, okay? And what you want to do is make a nice low tone, pull the tone out of your throat down into your chest so the hand on your chest starts to physically vibrate. You want to feel it in your body like this. We're going to do that again. Take a breath, and as you come back to standing, notice what that feels like to have the sound physically vibrate in your body. That's what we're going for, okay? The sound physically vibrates in the body. Might notice a little relaxation, a little calmness. So if you are in an airplane or if you are feeling anxiety at some point, drop down, connect with the earth, feel those nice low tones, physically moving you from the inside out, okay? Next, we're going to make a mid-range tone. You can stand or sit. What I like to do is imagine that I'm sending the sound out in all directions, right? So rather than just sending it out from my mouth, I'm feeling my legs, my feet, the breath across the ribs, the core abdominals engaged, and I'm not pushing or forcing that sound. I'm just letting it fill me up and then move past the edges of my body. One more of those. back of the throat or the back of the heart. And then the last one we're going to do is E, right in the center of the head, just a beautiful, soft, fully supported, effortless E vowel right in the center of your head. E. And one more of those. And now we're just going to simply, now that you know the vocal territory of your body, I'm going to play one note, a drone note, and I'm going to invite you to just simply play with your own voice, meaning go through different notes, different parts of the body, and notice what notes feel good to your body. Notice what notes feel grounding. Notice what notes feel like they're just bringing this deep sense of wellness and peace, or a sense of vibrating right in the parts of your body that hold on to tension most, okay? So if your heart feels like it's holding on to tension, send a sound right there. Or maybe it's But again, the invitation is to play for just 2 minutes with your own voice, letting it move to the places in your body that need that sense of aliveness, that sense of vibration, that sense of ease, that sense of peace. Here we go. Without opening your eyes, just simply feel into the impact of simply allowing your voice to find its way to those places in your body that need that vibrational quality, that need that particular frequency, that need you to give permission for it to do its thing, to do its wise and wondrous thing. Okay, So keeping your eyes closed or opening them, your choice. I'm just going to invite you to go into some self-inquiry now about your voice. So take a deep breath. Feel the impact of your voice. Maybe make a sound on the exhale. Ha. This beautiful thing that is a part of you, that is an expression of the deepest part of you, now has permission to release and feel perhaps some of the what we might call shadow emotions, the grief or the fear, the rage. Welcome those feelings being expressed. Give them space, and also welcome the feeling of pure bliss and joy and aliveness that also comes from melting the contractions. Make another sound. And if there is a part of you that perhaps knows what I've been talking about, knows the ways that trauma lives in you, the ways that you've contracted around it, perhaps today can be an invitation to give yourself permission on a daily basis to move and sound and sound and move, knowing that it is part of your healing path. It is perfectly natural to move. It is perfectly natural to release. It is perfectly natural to self-regulate. It is perfectly natural to come back to grounding and centering and co-regulation with others. This is what we need. And I'm going to invite you to consider in this moment the places where you actually can live into and speak and embody the truth of who you are. Look at your own life. Notice, where is it possible for you to be in your full expression of exactly who you are? Is it possible in your home? Is it welcomed in your home? Is it welcomed in your spiritual community? Are there others who see you deeply and honor and welcome your truth, your authentic truth? Are you able to live into and embody your truth in the place where you work or the way in which you work? And we're not asking this in self-judgment. We're asking this just as a pure inquiry. Where are those places where I might release any kind of mask or hiding or protection and live into the freedom, the liberation of my own expression? Notice. And also, perhaps notice what you were taught as a child about your voice and your self-expression and your big emotion. Were you able to have a voice in your home? Were you able to be who you are? Was your voice welcomed? Was it dismissed, or was it perhaps even silenced? You are not alone. You are not alone. So many others living with this silencing, wanting to break free, wanting to be with others, wanting to to be seen and heard. This is our birthright. And are you willing in this moment to make a commitment to that truth? Maybe admitting, yes, there was trauma. Yes, there were places where I felt afraid. Yes, there were places where I shut down. And that's okay. But in this moment, I commit to being a vibrational being, alive. 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 So, if there is one moment that you can identify from your life, a moment where perhaps your voice was taken from you or when you gave it away. One moment, the first moment that comes to your mind. Use your voice now to call it back. Reclaim your voice from that moment. Retrieve it. Say perhaps the thing you weren't able to say in that moment, or sing yourself back into your body. Sing that voice from that moment back into your body in this moment. Use your voice to do it. Here we go. And feel your voice come back to you, wrap itself around you, anchor into your bones. My voice. My voice. My voice. My voice. My voice. My voice. And as the drum fades, you bring yourself back into this moment, back into your body in this moment, perhaps bringing your hands to your own throat. Making some kind of commitment to your own expression, your own truth, the healing. And we're just going to sing a very simple chant for the next few moments to close. The words are, may we remember, may we remember, may we remember who we really are. You can sing with me, you can make up your own parts, you can sing harmonies, you're in hopefully the privacy of your own home. You can just simply have fun with this. This is our closing commitment prayer, dedication. May we remember, may we remember, may we remember who we really are. May we remember, may we remember, may we And a closing prayer, bringing your hands to your own body. Giving thanks for this miracle that is this body, that is this voice, this brain, this heart, this soul that wants, that yearns for expression in the world, that yearns to connect with self, with source, with each other. This soul that knows we are interconnected and interdependent in this great living, vibrating web of the universe. And that our songs and our words and our healing matters. Our songs and our words and our healing matters. It matters that we stop these cycles of violence and trauma that came to us, perhaps. It matters that we don't repeat those patterns. It matters that we do this healing now, that we understand that it is both a responsibility and a privilege. And to give thanks for the ways in which we are guided to do this, the ways in which we have information. May we normalize expression. May we normalize our voices rising together in glorious song. It's one of the most powerful things that we know how to do. It's time to reclaim it. So, dear Spirit, divine creative intelligence, as you live and move through us, show us the way. Show us the way. Show us the way. And we will be your instruments of grace. We will be your instruments. And we will bow with gratitude now and forevermore that we get to do this, that we get to heal through the power and the beauty that we create. For this opportunity and for any other opportunity that we have to be in expression, alone, together, especially together, we give great thanks. Blessed be. So thank you for joining me today. And we're going to close with a sound, a few sounds, to refute fear, to shift the frequency of fear. And I think I'll stay in the same key. Here we go.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Visit newearth1.com.